So my name's Jerry Kehoe. I am a lawyer practicing in a law firm in Boston. We've been in the Boston area for close to 30 years now, and we may come on to this a little bit later, but I've effectively been at the same company for that whole entire time. When I was in your situation, I grew up in the Philadelphia area, and at the time was thinking when I was thinking about colleges, I was thinking about law school, but not as the only thing I might do, but as one of the things I might like to do. Um, Neither of my parents graduated from college, and in fact, I have two older sisters, and at the time, neither of them had graduated from college. They've since have gone to college and have graduated, as has my younger brother. So at the time, I was really the first one in the family who was thinking about going right out of high school into a four-year college. And so I was thinking about a number of different ways to do that, a number of different areas of the country to go to, although then it was not as common to travel too far. So I ended up applying to six or eight schools and having some good choices and going to Cornell University in New York. And one of the reasons for going there is they have a program, and this was a little bit unusual way of thinking at the time, but it's probably as relevant or more relevant now. Is that I wanted a program that was broad based enough that I could explore different interests. Number one. Number two was a program that would be a good preparatory program for law school if I decided to do that. But number three, give some specific skills so that if I did not want to go on to graduate school right away or at all, I could go into the workforce. And so there was a program at Cornell like that. Many students at the time and even today use it as a pre-law type program. Others use it it's basically an applied social sciences type program. And so people use it to go into fields like HR, labor economics, some work for union or management side, labor relations issues. That was very popular at the time that I was there. It's not as prevalent now. So there are many uses of that program, and there were many large companies that would recruit undergrads right out of that program. So that was attractive to me. As it turns out, as I went through that program and I focused more and more on sort of the pre-law type courses, I really liked it and decided to go right to law school. So I didn't actually use it to go right into the workforce, but many of my friends at the time did, and it was a good program for that reason. There is no real pre-law type program. You could take any undergraduate major and go to law school, and many people do take regular arts and sciences programs, in English or history majors, etc. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. That could be perfectly good grounding to go to law school. So that's the approach that I took, and then when I graduated undergrad, I went back to the Philadelphia area where I grew up and went to law school at Temple University in North Philadelphia, which is quite a interesting program. It's Philadelphia has some major law schools at Villanova, University of Pennsylvania, Temple, Rutgers. But Temple's one of the ones that has a big night program, a part-time program, so you get a very, very diverse, even at the time, and it's even more so now, very diverse student body, which kind of appealed to me. I was going full-time. There were probably another 600 students full-time, but there were another like 300 that were part-time and night students that you got to interact with. And so that was a very good program for me, so I did that in 3 years and then graduated and moved into the workforce. Uh, it's hard to say actually. We had a neighbor growing up who was a lawyer, and as it turns out, he was practicing the kind of law that I was not really interested in, but I still was interested in what he did and went to work with him a few days. Essentially, he was a courtroom type lawyer, which I'm not. So I went to court with him, etc., to see what he was. Very much a local lawyer and a very well respected lawyer at the time. So that piqued my interest a little bit. Um, and as I said, at the time I was going to undergraduate, although I had some interest in pursuing it, it wasn't that strong. What I knew about it, which was not very much, to be honest, the attributes of that kind of profession were attractive to me in terms of what I thought my skill set was and what my interests were. So it wasn't just because it was law, it was because of a number of other things that we can talk about in a few minutes about the job, what I thought the job was that appealed to me. But I think the interest in it developed more in college than it did in law school. It really firmed up because, as I said, the program I was in, there were a lot of people that treated it as pre-law. We actually took some courses in the law school as an undergraduate, so you really got some good exposure to that, and that sort of cemented my desire to go and give it a try. Yeah, there are many different things. So people, and I was the same way when I was sitting in your chair. It's hard to understand. People think they know what a lawyer does, but unless you actually follow somebody around, or you have a parent, or someone who is in it, it's hard to understand, and it's not monolithic at all. So people go to law school for all different kinds of reasons. I mean, even when I was going to law school, there were a healthy number of people in my class who never intended to really practice law. I mean, they intended to do other things, such as develop public policy, for example, right? Now, there's a lot of legal aspects to that, so it's not as if. Or they intended to work for, non-governmental organizations or be in advocacy groups, where, again, law might be a piece of it, but a big part of it has nothing to do with law, but they figured that legal training was good training for them. So I pursued one of the more traditional paths out after law school, which is to go into a large law firm. But that's by no means the only thing that can be done. You could be a solo practitioner, you could be in a small private law firm, a larger private law firm. There are legal aid groups that you could be part of. There are government positions. There are positions in big companies where lawyers work full-time, etc. So there's a big range of things you could do in the actual practice of law. And then, as I said, there's a whole number of other things that you could do that are not really the practice of law, but where you're using your legal training. So for me, I decided to go into the big firm route. Once you do that, then you have another choice to make. So, at the time, the firm that I joined had about 150 lawyers. We have about 2,000 lawyers now in a single firm. That's spread out all over the world. At the time that I joined, it was more of a regional law firm. But even as a regional law firm, you could do things like litigation, meaning going to court on commercial disputes. You could do things like trust and estates law, where you're helping people with complicated estate planning. You could do tax law, so you're helping big companies or individuals structure complex tax arrangements. You could work for banks and financial institutions doing financing transactions or corporate transactions where companies combine or break apart. A whole range of things. And so the first really dividing line is, do you want to do litigation, courtroom stuff, or non-litigation? And I had seen enough, both as an undergrad and in law school, where I didn't really have an interest in litigation. That's very important, all that, but I wanted to do more business law. So for me, I do essentially business deals, and my deals tend to be large cross-border type deals. So these are company in one country acquiring a company in another country, big financial institutions in one country pooling money together in a fund to make investments in other countries, those types of arrangements. So in a typical day, I have teams of lawyers that work with me, so at all different levels, and so both at different levels and also different disciplines. So most of the transactions I work on have enough complexity so that I couldn't do it myself, both in terms of just the producing what needs to be produced, but also the range of expertise that we need. So I'll work with a tax lawyer, I'll work with people who are experts in pensions and the like, or that's often relevant. We do a lot of work in the energy space, so that's a heavily regulated industry in the US, so I'll have to bring the energy experts in, and on and on and on. And then there'll be more junior lawyers working with us to help us produce the documentation for our deals. So a typical deal will involve lots of conference calls. So people these days tend to, sometimes we physically get together, but oftentimes it's not needed. So we'll have long conference calls with the clients, could be located around the world, to get direction on where the deal is and where it's going, and then we'll meet internally to figure out how to accomplish that. And usually it ends up with a stack of paper about this high with a range of different agreements to document the deal. So that's really what a typical day is like. There's a lot of also internal management. I mean, it's a big business. A firm like this is a big business, and so all the partners in the firm take responsibility for managing their internal business as well, which means you've got to train and develop the young people, supervise them. You have a staff that's supporting you, which is very important, so you have to work with them. We have to relate to each other as partners as to who's doing what, etc. So it makes for a pretty full day usually. I think the part that I like the most is the deal doing, and for a business transactional lawyer, executing and delivering a good deal, deals that oftentimes are win-wins. So people tend to think of lawyers as always involved in a zero-sum type game. And litigation sometimes can be that way, where you either win or you lose, and there's not a lot in between. Business deals can be a win-win. Somebody wants to sell their business, somebody wants to buy it. There's always some difficult parts of negotiations, but if people can get comfortable with the terms, both sides can be happy. That's a good day. Of course. I think anyone would be kidding you, if they didn't say there were negatives. But it's there's a number of different drawbacks to it. I mean, one is the demands of the job. So, I mean, we're talking about jobs and careers, but you need to have another life as well. And so everybody has a different life. Some people are married, some people have families, some people have commitments to organizations that they're passionate about. Some people have, artistic things that they pursue, and those are all very, very important. Finding the balance in that is not easy for anybody, any kind of job you do. But I always tell people, and I tried to do this myself, and with mixed success. I wasn't always successful, but it was always important to me to find some balance. People would say to me, "Oh, I'm going to do it like you do it." You shouldn't do it like I. Everybody's got to find their own balance, because I don't know what you're balancing, and what you're balancing may be different than what I'm balancing. So everyone's got to do that, and I think where people can get out of whack, and where I have from time. Absolutely, and it's something that actually I find the lawyers are generally not very good at, because they tend to be fairly aggressive, hard-charging people, and they just expect the people on the team are all going to be aligned and be pulling in the same direction, and that's not. It's not necessarily the case. It's not because the people aren't willing or able to do it. It's just that they need some management and oversight to be able to do it, and some people are better at it than others. But I would think in almost any job, the ability to work as a team, the ability ultimately as you become more senior to manage teams is very important. And frankly, it's just not everybody has the skill set to do it or the desire to do it. It's one of the things that attracted me to this. I mean, I enjoy doing that, so it's important to me to be able to work with teams and try to manage them. I'm not saying I'm an expert, and you could interview the people that work with me, and they may have a different story. But I do make an effort to try to develop those skills and help manage and train people. The time is, if you don't focus on that balance and you just make one thing a priority over everything else, then it becomes problematic. I mean, if you make work too much of a priority, or if you make something outside of work a priority that can have a negative impact on what you're doing in the office, then that's an issue. So I would say that the negatives, if you will, or the drawbacks are, it's a demanding job. There are a lot of jobs that are demanding jobs, and when you get into those, you just have to focus on the balance and have people help you too. I mean, it's very important. Sometimes it's hard for you to do it yourself. You have to have other people say, am I getting a little out of whack here? Am I going overboard in this area or that area? It's not that you have to listen to them necessarily, but it's useful to get other kinds of input on that. And then the other thing I would say, and this is in any organization, but law firms are probably a little more extreme in this respect. There's a lot of personalities, there's a lot of ego, there's a lot of hard-driving people, and you got to navigate your way through that, and that's not easy for people. And again, that's going to be in any organization, but in these types of professional service organizations, it could be difficult to do. It's a big debate now. It's a good question. In my area, it's in the legal area in general. It's a huge debate right now, and there's been a lot written in the papers. Even there's been a lot written in the legal press, but even in the regular press, there's been a lot written about: do we have too many lawyers? Does this really make sense? And I think the answer to that is no. It's not that we have too many lawyers. I do think there are two big picture things going on that will impact somebody thinking about getting into this space. But I'm not discouraging people, because I think in the end this will sort itself out. But the one big thing is we're coming off a pretty serious sort of recession. So from '07 to 2012, 2013. Now those are normal business cycles. This was more severe than normal. It had a big impact on our business and most businesses. And so there was a fairly drastic reduction in the number of people we were hiring out of law schools for a number of years. That's one thing that has gone on. Now we're coming out of that, but fairly slowly. So the question is, is that just a cyclical thing and we'll get back to a boom time again, or is it something that's a little more systemic, a little more permanent, that is changing the way that lawyers work, etc. So that's one thing that's going on. Another thing that's going on is through technology, through changes in technology, changes in the way that businesses use lawyers, changes in the way people view litigation and their willingness to get into big court cases, etc. It's possible that there's some more permanent things that are happening there that will change the way lawyers work to a certain extent, and reduce the number of opportunities relative to 20, 30 years ago in the big law firm space. It's entirely possible that will happen. Now, that is not necessarily a bad thing for the economy as a whole or for society or anything like that. Some of the change is very good. I mean, lawyers are basically more productive because they have so much more technology to help them. So that's not a bad thing. However, there are a number of underserved areas, legal areas, where they need more lawyers, to be honest. And so, I think people that would be thinking about law school would want to keep a very open mind about that, and not be thinking monolithically that if I go to law school, the only way I'll be considered a success is if I graduate the top of my class and get into a big law firm. That was a measure of success a number of years ago. It's very different now. So there are lots of ways to be successful out of law school without going to a big law firm necessarily. And so it's still very good training for a large number of different kinds of jobs and opportunities and careers in the practice of law, and even only marginally involving the practice of law. So, I would encourage people to still consider it. What I discourage people from doing is going to school and running up a lot of debt and thinking that they have a golden ticket to make a lot of money out the door, because that's not necessarily the case anymore. Yeah, I mean, some of the skills relate as well to what I would say to people to be thinking about for careers in general, really, to be honest. So, but the things that attracted me to the law and that relate to my own skills are things like, intellectual curiosity, and that, I think most people your age, hopefully, and in college are very intellectually curious, and that can apply to a lot of different jobs. But one thing that attracted me is to a law firm setting, at least, is that you're working with a whole range of different clients, right? So it's not as if you're doing the same thing all the time, because you could be working on a corporate acquisition, one day. You could be working for a bank in a financial transaction another day, working for a private equity firm, making investments another day. And so number of different types of institutions you'd be working with, a number of different types of people, different types of deals. So, to be curious, to want to keep learning, to want to be challenged. It's challenging intellectually to do it, especially at a high level, because it's not routine. Like, a lot of things you do are more cutting edge. They're a little different. The markets evolve. You've got to change. So you really have to have the skill set of wanting to learn, wanting to see new things, wanting diversity in terms of the things that you're working on. I think those are all, pretty important. Another thing that attracted me to it is there's a bit of autonomy in the job as well. I mean, you work as teams. You're not an island. But on the other hand, you're not one of 50 people making the same widget either. So there's nothing wrong with that. If people want to do that, they say, look, my real passion is I want to go home and play the saxophone every day, and I'm in a band, and when I'm working, I just want to go and make the same widget every day. Nothing wrong with that, But if you want something that is different, is challenging, is a bit autonomous in the sense that you can work in a big firm, but when you get to a certain level, you're running your own deals, and you have the support of the firm. Or you could be, hang out your own shingle. You could be down the street and, helping businesses and people with their local problems. That's a great practice as well. And there's a bit of autonomy. You really like running your own business. Some people are attracted to working at larger firms or larger companies. And you see this even in the tech, right? You can go work for Google, and you get a bunch of big people. There's a campus, a lot of interchange of ideas. Some entrepreneurs, they want to strike out on their own, and they want to build their own businesses. It's the same kind of thing, and the legal side will allow you to do that as well. Yeah, I have children your age, so I do go through this with them as well. And what I tell them is not certainly at your level. So you're as you're going through high school, and even in the first few years of college, stay open-minded. There's nothing wrong. Look, some people know from, I don't know how, but they know from when they're 10 years old that they're going to be X, and then they pursue that, and they actually do it for their entire lives, and they love it, and that's terrific. But that's unusual, I think. I mean, I think if you look around, most people don't have that kind of path, and so I would stay open-minded about things, and not. It's fine to have some direction, to say, hey, I really think I see this person do this. It really is of interest to me. That's no problem. No problem to pursue it. But stay open-minded, especially through your high school and college years, because there's so much that you're going to get exposed to that could change your mind. So stay open-minded about it. Stay intellectually curious, exploring a number of different things. Focus not so much on a specific job or so-called career as what appeals to you as a person, in what you want to do, whether it's in work or outside of work even. Is it autonomy versus working with a group? What kind of person are you? Is it are you outgoing or a little more reserved? Think about your own personal traits and skills, and then how they would fit into different jobs, rather than saying, oh, my friend's brother, works at this big bank, and that's what I want to do. And it's hard to say that, because you really don't know what that's like, number one, and number two, you don't know how it matches up with your own sort of intrinsic way of thinking and doing things. So I'd focus more on that and let that lead you into some areas. I think you're going to be happier. You're likely to be happier to doing that, rather than saying, look, I've seen TV, I've heard that lawyers have interesting careers and they make a lot of money, so that's what I'm going to do. That's just not a great basis, I think, to be going forward into something, whether it's medicine or law or anything really. Rather, think about who you are, what really appeals to you in terms of the aspects of a potential job, and then go out and think about jobs that have those aspects. Drive it in that way, rather than let the job drive you into something that may not really fit you.
Great. I think we got everything. Any other things you want to say to?
No, just good luck. I mean, it's challenging for sure. I mean, everybody says this, oh, it's more difficult than when I was at that stage, but it's exciting. One thing I would say to people is I look at it as all opportunity and excitement. I mean, it really, there's nothing to be, yes, the world changed. The world's always going to change. Yes, it's different than it was 20 years ago, but thank goodness, because it's things needed to be different. So, are there challenges? Yes, but there's a huge amount of opportunities. I'd be optimistic.
All right.
All
Thank
right.
you. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks.